Hi friends, and welcome to the Backyard Garden. I am so glad to be back. I hate it when I'm not available to do some sort of a garden live situation. I was actually in the car, literally driving, when Joe did the live for us last week. And it turned out really good. You guys seem to appreciate Joe and the chickens and all the things he talked about.
I rewatched it and I had left off 25 things I intended to say.
Yeah, there's definitely a challenge. And that's what tends to happen with me when you'll find that I chase a lot of rabbits because I'm like, oh yeah, I want to make sure I tell you this, and oh yeah, I want to make sure I tell you this, and oh yeah. And so I'm literally a fireball of information coming at you on a regular basis. So I get it. But that's what's great about these weekly things is that I can repeat things, I can say new things, and I can give you, through a screen, as hands-on a learning experience as possible, right? And I'm really excited about talking about today because we were up with the 6:30 a.m. Alarm clock on a Sunday morning. A couple of reasons. Joe needed to finish getting that Dinner Table Talks podcast edited so that we can launch that on Monday.
It's a good one.
It's a good one. And we say that every week, but we know ourselves well enough to know when the ups and downs are happening, right? But that's been happening. But then in addition to that, the last week, I have been actively harvesting for the Grow Local South Texas Farm to Table fundraiser. It's a very important thing for me, and this is a big deal for me. Not unlike, if this was a podcast, would you edit that out, Joe?
It's gone.
Like the farmer's market, the downtown farmer's market that I did a few weeks ago, this is me on the other side of the table at an event that Grow Local South Texas is doing. And it's been such a joy to be involved in it this year as a farmer and to be in touch with the event coordinator Emily Dodd and to talk to her about what's been available. And truth be told, I'm extremely proud of myself. I have a lot of good produce going into that event this year, and I know that they're relying on a lot of the things that I'm pulling out of my gardens. But that's the reason why I do these educational videos every Sunday, and this is the reason why I'm offering a lot more educational events. Because the permaculture style of gardening that I'm doing is creating a situation where I can go throughout an entire year with not having access to food. Did that come out right? With having access to food. 12 months out of the year, my garden is feeding my family. Now, there's ups and downs, and there's times when we get tired of eating whatever is available, and that's especially in the summertime.
Or it's 125 degrees outside.
And I don't want to harvest. But that doesn't mean that in a worst case scenario, where there's some kind of a grid shutdown or some kind of distribution issue, that I can't go out and get some green stuff to feed my family so that my family is eating good, fresh, green produce. And so I wanted to show off today what's happening in this permaculture style of garden. Now, permaculture has got a lot of different, I think there's like 9 aspects to permaculture. Permaculture isn't really just a gardening style like organic gardening or other types of regenerative agriculture, things like that. What it is more of a lifestyle. It's the way you treat your entire life. And so the way that I treat my gardens is in a permaculture style of growing. And part of that means that I create situations that can weather the storm, no matter what the storm is, no matter whether it's heat, drought, wind, flood. It doesn't really matter what the weather is. My gardens can handle it, and enough things can stay alive to sustain me, to sustain not only feeding my family, but also participating in the ability to feed other families in my area. So what are the things that I'm harvesting right now that are a product of the fact that I am a permaculture garden? One of those things was all the Trombonchino Squash that are going to be served at the Farm to Table dinner. That's a massive amount of stuff. I have talked about Trombonchino Squash repeatedly. Those are the winter squash that are also a green growing squash, and I'm going to show you more of that. You can see that it is growing along that back fence line. It is still producing, and I have a lot up in the front that is actually looking really, really, really beautiful and healthy. That is stuff that I planted by seed in March of last year. Now let me show you around at some of the other things that are happening. But I also want to point out something else that I'm doing for the Grow Local Farm to Table dinner. That is providing 10 pounds of hardy green leaves so that they can make some sort of a fresh green salad, and also providing a majority of a huge bunch of beautiful edible flowers because my flowers are popping, because my flowers were in the ground and were able to sustain through the summer and are now popping again with lots of beautiful flowers. And all of the flowers that I grow are edible in nature. So they can be used to make your salads more beautiful. Now, as we make our way around, I want you to notice the flowers, but I also want you to notice the herbs. Lots of herbs are going into that. I'm doing that Fall Fresh Herb Long Lunch Club that's coming up on November the 3rd. There's lots of fresh herbs out here. There's lots of flowers out here, and there's lots of edible greens that can be taken into your smoothies, your salads, all of those types of things. But 99% of what I'm harvesting right now, 90% of what, I'm going to give it 90% of what I'm harvesting right now is
I'll edit
coming
that out,
from
don't worry.
last seasons or the season before. They might have even been coming from a full year ago. And they're certainly coming from flowers that have deadheaded themselves, dropped their seeds, and regrown themselves. And that's things I want you to look at.
Joanne says, good morning. I guess if folks have questions, just ask away. I'll relate them to you.
Absolutely. And really my intentions were to just give you the farm tour today so that you can see, but I wanted to give you some things to notice, because take a look at this Jing orange okra. It's a really pretty okra plant. And when I take you around to the front garden, you'll see massive amounts of beautiful okra plants. Now, these are not only pretty plants, they are also providing pretty edible flowers that if you want to spice up your Thanksgiving, Friendsgiving, all the things that are coming up here, you can use pretty flowers off of your okra plants. You can also use these leaves. These leaves are edible and they're pretty and they taste good. And this particular variety is not real spiny or prickly, so you don't really have to worry about that. That's nice. So one of the things I would say too is not to harvest, like this is the stuff you want to get rid of, okay? And so if I had a plant, I'll show you some in a little bit, but these little, this is because we've had so much water, so much standing water. So there's a little bit of mosaic mold or powdery mildew or something. Now that's not the leaves you would use to cook with or put in your smoothies. That might be some really clear knowledge that most people would know, but sometimes making sure that people know to use the freshest, most beautiful looking leaves makes more sense than, go out there and cut my okra leaves. Those look gross. Why would I want to do that? No, we're looking for the fresh and beautiful ones. Let's walk over here so I can show you a little bit more of what I'm talking about. Same thing with this roselle. You're clipping these beautiful leaves, and this roselle leaf is actually very soft, like spinach, and tart, delicious. It will be a notable, delicious flavor in a salad or in a smoothie. Okay, so here you've got some different varieties of okra. And things that I've done to keep my okra in good production is that I've gone in and cut out these big major limbs where there's maybe some overgrowth of, look at this. There's some overgrowth of okra pods. I would cut out the base of this stalk right here. That is if I've got my big trimming things over here. This is like a tree here. But when I cut that back, what happens is the plant is healthy enough to get growing back from the bottom, and it creates kind of a nice tropical perennial bush type of situation. Now these will potentially not be knocked out if we have another heavy freeze again. If we have a mild freeze, it'll probably just knock them back a little bit and then they can restart again. But if we have a heavy freeze like we did last year, you will lose this. But the thing about it is that because you've let them grow out all summer long, you literally do not have to worry about ever planting okra again in these particular areas unless you purposefully want them in different places. Because these seeds are gonna drop and more okra is gonna come up. Some of it will die if a freeze or a couple of freezes happen. Some of it will actually live, and then we will go on and continue to have okra into the spring. So you can have, this is one of those plants. Roselle is the same, okra is the same, your Turk's cap, you've heard me talking a lot about those native edible perennials and things that we might want to have access to in a worst case scenario. Your okra is a good example of that, because as I said, not only is it going to give you the greens you're looking for your smoothies or for your salads, but it's also going to continue to produce, and it's also going to give you lots of seeds that you can, I have a literal canister of okra seeds. I'm going to be the best okra farmer in all of South Texas.
Roberta says, wow, that's a gigantic okra. Do these stay year round? You did touch on that.
Yes, pretty much. I mean, it just kind of, what happens is that you have, when we have a freeze, so back up and I'm going to show you something. This particular area, I don't know if you can kind of look at this garden. In this garden, outside of maybe a couple of plants on this particular row right here, and the one pretty jing orange over there and over there, I did not plant new start babies. There was a whole field of okra here my very, very first season in August of trying to start kind of growing out here. My dad had planted it. And it was a lot of this hill country, Star of David variety of okra. The one plant that I left when I built this whole garden was right here. And it was a big, huge okra bush. And when the freeze came, it had all these beautiful seeds on it. And the freeze knocked it back. So then I was able to just go in and cut it all out. But look what happened all around it. So I've had to go in here into my rows and take out things. Yes, of course, the ones that were not important. I mean, you see there's okra here. Okra, 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 okra. I don't need all that okra. But the ones that end up in here, up on the rows, I leave those, I clean things up, I get them out of there. If they start creating a situation where you notice that there's a ridiculous amount of aphids and ants on them, cut that one out. Cut it out as low as you can. It'll come back healthier again from the bottom. And you can see that it's coming back healthy from the bottom. You can see where I cut out the center stalks of things, and they're coming up again. And they're coming up with nice fresh green okra and pretty flowers, and then all these beautiful green leaves that are soft and not super spiny that you can use in your salads and your smoothies and stuff like that. So this is permaculture or food foresting style of gardening.
Roberta says that she planted a different kind this year.
Yes.
Nice.
They're beautiful. I planted the two varieties of new that I planted this year. Now in the past I've had the hill country. It's a big nice round. It's almost like the Star of David, although this is not technically the Star of David. And then I also planted the spineless green, which is a really nice thin green. I really like that one as well. I planted two new varieties this year, the Jing Orange, which I mentioned. I love that one. It is so pretty. The leaves are so pretty. It's very tasty. And then I also planted the Burgundy, and that one is one of the most gorgeous okra I've ever seen. Is literally purple stalks of okra. So that one's been a lot of fun. So there's lots of fun varieties to plant, but this is when I talk about kind of the food foresting, permaculture style. This is important in a coastal tropical region because these plants like this type of weather, and they can maintain through the summertime, and then you can still have the produce available to you as soon as the fall temperatures start to drop and you want to get back into your garden. You've got food to harvest. It's the same thing with these roselle plants, or you may know it as the edible hibiscus. I am making a beautiful bunch of 5 gallons of edible hibiscus mint tea with some local honey from South Texas apiaries that will be served at the Grow Local dinner tonight. But these leaves are also going to be in the salads, like I mentioned before. Now, one of the things I've been learning is that when you're comparing varieties, so let's take examples of the okra over there. We've got 5 different varieties of okra. They're not all going to harvest on the same day. So some are going to harvest at different times. So those are things you might notice. What I've noticed is this is my Thai roselle. It is not yet producing the calyxes, but I've been harvesting calyxes for weeks off of this variety. This variety is St. Nevis and Kitts. Very island worthy variety, and it produces very quickly. So this is what I'm using to make my hibiscus mint tea. This is a plant that grows really, really well in our area. It's like if you're gonna plant those perennial bushes, the roselle and the Turk's cap, these are the same, like your hibiscus plants. Everybody knows the hibiscus plant. Everybody has hibiscuses, and everybody's hibiscus are probably, even after the freeze, growing bigger than they want them to. It's the same thing with your roselle. It's the same thing with your okra, and these plants, and your Turk's cap for that matter. And all parts of those are edible and usable. So you can cut a stalk off of this in order to harvest it all. So like I want to clean up this whole thing right here. I'm going to cut the whole stalk out, and then I'm going to trim it off. I'm going to take the green leaves that I want. I'm going to take the calyxes that I want. Both of those are edible. The flowers are also edible and beautiful. See, you can put this in a beautiful dish that you're making for your holiday meals and things like that. And so all of that stuff is edible, right? Then you take that stalk, you drop it in the water for a couple of days, it starts to put down roots. You get an entire other plant that you can use in a different place in your garden. So this is a really good example, along with the Turk's cap that I always talk about ways to do edible landscaping, permanent perennials. Now, again, the winter and a potential heavy freeze will knock them back. But because these were planted in March, have grown strong, the roots are grown strong, I'm mulching heavily, I'm creating nice warmer microclimates, I likely wouldn't lose the root ball. I would only lose the main parts of the plant. So if you know a freeze is coming and you've got a plant that looks this good and you want to harvest off of it, that would be the time to go and clean that whole plant up and just leave the green and the roots down underneath, and then just make sure they're really nicely mulched so that the root base stays alive. The plant will actually come back healthier the next year. This is a great example that we've seen with our Turk's caps that are like the biggest Turk's caps I've ever seen, and they are covered in red flowers, which means they will be covered in red berries. All things you can use in beautiful salads. All of the leaves, all of the berries, all of the flowers are a great addition to your house. And if you've got kids, extremely good addition to your house. Okay, so other things that we're seeing out here in the garden as well.
I just have to say hello to our friends real quick, if you don't mind. Say hi to Roberta, who lives in Laredo.
So these cucumbers that are on the fence line here, some of them were from reseeds that have just started coming back on their own. Some of them are plants that stayed alive and are now starting to put on cucumbers. I have been harvesting cucumbers off of this. So that's what's on this entire fence line here. These pepper plants are pepper plants that were put in as a little transplant in March. And they are now producing lots and lots of poblanos, Anaheims, serranos. We're now making a delicious, delicious, delicious fermented hot sauce that is great over cream cheese. I would suggest that anybody learn that particular recipe. Now, if the freeze is an issue, I could very well lose these pepper plants, but they're already in the ground, they're well established, and you've heard me say biennial, meaning that this plant can live 2 or 3 years if the root base doesn't freeze. Now, that's the way my eggplants always were. But last year I lost my eggplants. So if we get another super duper hard freeze like we did last February, then I will lose all the peppers, all the tomatoes that are planted in the ground. So at this point, any new peppers or tomatoes that I have coming out of my nursery are going into smaller pots that I will keep care of until we get to March, where I can then plant them out in the garden and give them an entire year to grow, which could turn into, as those of you know, could turn into 2-year growth, because we might not have the super duper hard freeze again, hopefully. I don't know, I kind of like that super duper hard freeze actually. I think it made things better. Okay.
It makes you clean things up.
Exactly. Okay, so other things that are repopping are this Gliardia flowers. This is just like a wildflower. Borage that I never planted again. Borage will be coming up everywhere again. It puts on the edible flowers. Here's a little edible flower. It tastes like a cucumber. You can also use the leaves of these in all different types of recipes. Here's a beautiful bell pepper plant that is still, look at the size of that sucker.
Show me.
My goodness, he needs to be harvested.
Hello, dinner.
Ah, that's a stuffed bell pepper right there.
Wow.
Look at that.
There's another one right here.
I'll leave that one till. Let's see, are there any draggers? I like to pick up the draggers. And these are some things that happen after a plant starts to get, after a pepper starts to stick around for a while. It starts to get some types of molds and things like that. And, you know, if it gets really bad, you might just cut it back down as low as it can and see if it comes back out again. But the other things you can do is you can consider that this particular plant has used up all of the nutrients that it's able to access in this particular area. So you might drop in some Epsom salt, some azomite, I use seabird guano, which has got a lot of potassium in it, and that helps put the flowers back on again. But this time of year, as we move into like the freeze season, they're going to stop putting flowers on anyways. So I'm kind of just keeping an eye on my pepper plants to see how healthy they stay, or if they start to get into a situation. So, okay, here's another example of a biennial. This is a biennial flower. It is called all of a sudden my brain just went completely blank. It's hollyhock. Okay, I got this. Hollyhocks, I've never really seen many hollyhocks growing in South Texas. I planted several of these plants last year, and they stayed through the freeze, they stayed through the summer, even in my unwatered bed. This is my irrigated garden, and then I have another garden in the front that is not an irrigated garden. And this particular plant has stayed well and healthy. So now what'll end up happening, now that it's into the second year, is that by the time spring comes, this plant will have sprouted up and it will have big, amazing hollyhock flowers on it. I am so excited to see how that comes together. I've also got celery that was planted last year this time that I could begin harvesting and using.
I love celery.
If it's a little bit too bitter for fresh tasting or a little too small, not quite crunchy enough, that's no big deal. This is really, really good for dehydrating and grinding or just using the way it is, and you can cook with it. And we love cooking with that.
When you give a big batch of celery powder that you've dehydrated and packaged, it immediately begins to go into any dish that makes sense to do it. And it does. It provides a lot of a nice flavor pop for a lot of great things.
We're pretty set on the fact that there's not one recipe that doesn't require a pepper, some onion,
garlic,
lots of garlic, and some celery.
Right. Stews, soups,
all of it.
I'm hungry now.
So that's the thing. The leeks were planted last year, and now, like, I'm just loving this, learning so much about leeks. Now all my leeks are really doing well. So I didn't really have any leeks last year, but they were all planted last year. Now I've got leeks kind of coming up everywhere. I found this new one I'm excited about. This is called Salad Burnet. So if you see, it's really cut way back because I just cut it and threw it into the Grow Local green salad mix. But it tastes like a cucumber. It's really nice on a salad, in your smoothies, also on a sandwich, because if you don't have any cucumbers, this kind of gives you that fresh, cool cucumber flavor. It's called Salad Burnet. You should be able to find a start at any of your local nurseries, or my friend Leo Ruiz, who has the mobile nursery. He's the one that actually gave me this as a gift. I am very happy that he introduced me to this variety of vegetable or herb because it does really well and it tastes amazing.
How do you find Leo on Facebook?
Get Growing. Get Growing. Yes, Yarrow. I mentioned Yarrow this last week because of this, right?
Come on, so put it back up. What happened?
Well, I was cleaning up my roselle plants, and I do it real fast. Tick! I literally went, uh-oh, and I squeezed it real tight. I wrapped it. I ran straight to the garden. I snipped some yarrow. I wrapped the yarrow around my finger. I held it on there until it stopped bleeding. That's the main thing. Yarrow is really, really good for skin lacerations.
It's a natural anticoagulant?
Something like that, yeah. Something like that. All those big, big sciencey words, I'm all with.
Let me say that again so I sound smarter. It's a natural coagulant?
Oh my goodness, you're so smart.
You don't want to put an anticoagulant on a bleeding wound.
So yarrow is really, really good for gardeners to have. But I also want to add in, while we're talking about yarrow, November the 15th, I am hosting Herbs for Health and Farm Forage right here at the farm with my amazing friend Justin Duncan, who works for the National Center for Appropriate Technology. He is a sustainable agriculture specialist. It's kind of like an agri-life person, but focused on organic and sustainable, so like into my gig kind of stuff. And he is the smartest guy I know. I'm like, cue joke, Joe. Justin is amazing. He's super smart, and he's going to use a lot of big science words, and I'm going to go, duh, common language, please. And then he's going to laugh at me or whatever. But he's going to teach us how to use all these perennials, all these herbs. So traditional ones that you might be growing in your garden, but also the forage that's on your farm. And when you live on the South Texas, especially on the coast, you will learn we have a lot of productive plants in our area. We have a lot of medicinal plants in our area. We have a lot of food grade plants in our area. Things that most people have considered weeds forever and that might have even been called ornamental are actually not really ornamental. They're great medicinal, great for our health, and also something you could eat if you were in an off-grid, no distribution situation and just needed some access to some fresh greens. So these are some things to keep in mind, and if you're interested in that event, send me a message and I will make sure to get it. I will drop it in the link down there for sure. I'm excited about that one. Of course, you'll notice that I grow a lot of herbs this time of year. So you can see basil, 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 all different varieties of basil. Now this is holy basil, a very medicinal basil, holy or Tulsi basil. This is a good one just to, number one, let happen for the bees. Look at all my bees down here. Zoom, 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 zoomy, zoomy, all the happy bees. It smells so sweet and delicious. It's beautiful in flower arrangements. It adds brightness and beautiful flavors and smells to your home. But in addition to that, it's beneficial for your garden. It would be what I would consider a cover crop, really. I need to plant a lot of basil, a lot of parsley, a lot of dill, a lot of cilantro, all of those different types of things because they're such great companion plants. They help to create the microclimate. They help to create that permaculture style of growing because I do not spray anything on this garden. I don't spray organic pest control. I don't spray anything on this garden. I give this garden the plants and the carbon and the nutrients that it needs. And then I work to consistently clean up, harvest, and deal with those types of situations. And that's what makes my garden so healthy and available to grow all of these different things all year. Things like these marigolds. Look at the beauty of these marigolds. And these are all deadheaded, seeded of their own. I didn't even plant these marigolds. All edible flowers, all great companion plants. Joe, turn around right behind you and look at the beautiful milkweed where my monarch butterflies can begin laying their eggs right there with that plant so that the little caterpillars can grow up, can eat parsley, can eat dill, can eat all of these different things. I can't walk that way or else I'll stomp on things. And then when January comes, if we don't get some sort of a freeze that knocks back that tropical milkweed, we need to knock it back ourselves. That's really important. Ooh, look down there, there's some seeds. Do you see them? I need to collect those. Can you grab those for me? Perfect. So I can just plant these later. Listen, this is what happens. One time I had this corporate job where I worked in an office. It lasted for about 6 months. And in there, if you looked under my desk...
Oh, there they go.
Ooh, bye-bye. If you looked under my desk where I worked at my laptop in an office, you would find seeds. Because I put seeds in my pockets. And then they come out. In all kinds of different places.
You need a utility belt.
I have utility belts. They're always full of seeds.
Instead of a stun gun or handcuffs. Yeah, I got milkweed.
One thing to keep in mind about zinnias is that a lot of the zinnias you see growing in my area are mostly the small varieties, kind of these little babies. And that's most of what you're going to be picking up at kind of a generic zinnia mix. When you see that, you're going to get these little baby zinnias. But if you look for a very specific cut zinnias, cut flower zinnias, you're going to end up getting these really, really big zinnia flowers. And these are the ones that are going to make the amazing flower arrangements. And so I'm so happy to see that one of these survived because I spent a lot of time planting these in order to get them to have some cut flower varieties. I also love that white. I was real purposeful about finding a good white zinnia flower because those also add a lot of texture and color to any kind of arrangements. And you can use zinnias for edible flowers. So if you've got all these little tiny ones and you want to do some edible flowers, these are the good ones for that. And be sure to grab yourself a few of the pretty marigolds, a few of the white flowers, and some of the okra flowers. And those are all great, nice little pops.
Nothing gets a young child more interested in a salad that they wouldn't normally be interested in than saying, you can eat those flowers. You can eat those flowers.
Their favorites actually are the Turk's cap, the little, because they have, I tell them they have a little honey in their bellies, and they love those little red seeds, and they're tasty. They're easy to eat. So definitely put those in your salads as the holiday seasons come around and you're making nice dinners. Now, I think that this watermelon is probably done. This one, when I came out this morning, it was already kind of a funky one anyways. It was laying on the ground. That's a pure sign that this one is ripe and ready. But because this one was on the same limb as...
Never mind.
It's done. But I'm pretty sure this is going to be a very tasty... This is a moon and star watermelon. So I'm excited to get to give those a chance. Permaculture gardening, I still have watermelons growing in October. So that's something to keep in mind while my tomatoes are starting to set back on, while my zinnias are starting to set back in, while I'm beginning to see mustard greens, the things that I've begun planting, and radishes that I've begun planting. Seeing more and more of that as well. Here's my tomatoes that are starting to come on. I've got some big ones inside there, but these are little like Juliet style red tomatoes, red cherry tomatoes that are all starting to set again. Deep inside there, I've got some bigger paste tomatoes that are all starting to set. So sometimes we will get a freeze in November, kind of mid-November, not a hard freeze. It's like 32 degrees for 1 hour overnight. That's enough to knock your tomatoes back. So if you see that coming, that or your peppers or your eggplant, if you see that temperature drop happen in November, or you're hearing that that's about to happen, you do need to go out and harvest all your fruit off of your plants. Because even if the plant can handle that, and it might not be able to, but even if it can, the fruit will be frozen and it won't taste good anymore. So that's why you end up seeing green tomatoes at the farmer's market in the fall, because that's what's happened. Someone was expecting a freeze and they went ahead and harvested all the green tomatoes.
I don't care all this talk about okra. Throw some green tomatoes in that fry.
All right, garden tour days are a little bit long, but I did want to show you guys, I've had my chickens in this tractor. I've been telling you that for a while now, that this was coming. So this tractor got built. I've told you about this whole process. I've got the old tunnels that we were using at the other house. One of them's got a cap on the end of it now. And now I have some other pieces that are extension pieces and right angle pieces that I can slide in to make them be able to go down different rows. So of course they dug all this up. This was just some mulch, so that just gave them something to do, some digging around and some food to find. But then in addition to that, they've gone up and down this whole row. Now this particular row, part of the reason why I picked this one for them to work on is because I got a lot of weeds and I've got a lot of stuff going on over here, weed seeds and everything. Because during the flooding that we've gotten now twice in the last few weeks, one was 8 inches in an hour, everything flows down these pathways right here. So water stands in here. So I've got a lot of cleanup that has to happen on this particular area over here, but I'm gonna use my chickens to really help me out with that. And they actually do lay eggs out here. So they're laying their eggs, they're getting their water, they're helping me do some work, they're cleaning things up for me.
How'd they do? I mean, now that you're giving an assessment of the work that they did.
Wait right there, because I want to show you that too. Look at this.
That's what they left behind?
Yeah, so what I'll do is, so say they did this part, I need to do this part. So I would then go through and clean the actual garden bed up and throw this good nice soil up there on top, plant some more seeds down inside there. That's how I would take care of cleaning up this row. I wanted to show you this. These are those tiny little, a lot of times people get them confused. This is a Mexican gherkin cucumber. You can pop them off just like that and eat them. This is over summered, so this plant was not, couldn't take off. I couldn't get it to take off. Now I've got 2 or 3 of them that are growing like crazy like this. So this is going to be that early, quick cucumber that we're getting right now. That one was no good.
Well, be still though. There you go.
Slice it in 2, or just crunch it, or throw it in your smoothie, or whatever. And you've got a tart, sweet cucumber in the fall. If a freeze comes, that will be gone, okay? Let's see, I saw another cucumber over here somewhere. One thing you need to keep in mind this time of year is we're still seeing high temperatures. Cucumbers don't like high temperatures. So you gotta taste them before you put them into your salad. Now these over here, fresh, delicious, sweet, no bitterness. I have noticed on some of these other ones, we're still seeing a little bit of bitterness.
It's just so hot outside?
Still so hot, still hitting 90 degrees, that kind of stuff, okay? So you can see the borage coming up here. Did not replant that, coming up on its own. Kale, coming up over there.
Did you plant the kale?
Not recently. Nothing on this row has been planted.
These are just leftovers, replants.
Reseeds. Come back from last season. Swiss chard. I harvested a bunch of Swiss chard off of that for the Grow Local event.
But that will come back and you'll have more leaves to get later.
Yeah. And if it doesn't, that's okay. Look at this beautiful basil. Of course, you all know about my salvias, the red salvias. Okay. Quickly, let's walk to the other garden. Those Brussels sprouts, hold on, let me show you so you can see. This right here, that right there, and then there's a few more down there. These were planted by seed August of last year. So they're over a year old plants, and they're still producing Brussels sprouts and leaves, and these leaves of the Brussels sprouts did go into the Grow Local Hardy Mix. Here's some Swiss chard that was planted last season. It's not looking super great right now, but once I get this all nice and cleaned up, it'll start popping back again. One thing to keep in mind about your soft leaves, I don't plant my soft leaves right now because of the caterpillars. The caterpillars are going to eat all of that. There's some Green Harmony. I've been harvesting lots of Green Harmony for salad mixes, the Grow Local event, lots of Green Harmony there. So I don't begin planting, I begin planting by seed my soft greens in November. In October is when I plant transplants of broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, and then seeding carrots, radishes, turnips, beets, all of that kind of stuff. So if you think about what we're trying to grow our roots right now, because even if something nibbles away at the top of the roots, the green part, it's not really that big of a deal because a root will put on more green while it's growing its root. But you don't want to put all your lettuce and spinach out and then it's gone because the caterpillars ate it all. So keep that in mind when you're planting your seeds. Okay, I've done nothing to this section of the garden except harvest basil. And you can see what I've been talking about the tall okra. So there's fire ants right there, babe.
Okay, I got it.
So if I cut out these major sections here, this will just come back really nice on the bottom. Some fresh grown.
Will there be a day where you just top all this off? Or do you?
No, I hope a freeze will do that for me.
Okay.
So then here's some squash that got planted last season. I think this is a pumpkin still. So a freeze will kill this stuff, but before then, it puts on fruits potentially. It puts on these beautiful flowers that could be used. Look how big those flowers are. That is absolutely something that could be stuffed with cheese and fried.
You're speaking my language.
Let's do it. And then you also have some of the...
Hold on, I gotta get some fire ants off me.
I told you to stop stamping in the fire ants.
Oh, they're everywhere.
I know. Stop stamping in the fire ants.
All right, I'm good.
Okay, all this stuff that you're seeing growing out all over here, that's sweet potato vine.
Is the fire ants come up because we got so much water?
And also because they're fire ants and they're everywhere.
The fire ants doing what they do?
Yep. And they don't really bother me. I mean, they do. I mean, I get eaten up by them, but they're important, and I just try to run them off with the fire hose. With a water hose. I just spray them out. If they're in an area that bothers me, let's put it that way. This is all sweet potatoes. This was 2 rows of like 6 slips. I'm not doing anything with these sweet potatoes until the plant starts to die. And that might be, I'm expecting the first freeze. Then I would go in and harvest all that. So you could actually continue growing sweet potatoes until January and start harvesting and then have them for January, or you could have them for December. Like, that's part of it too. If you're looking to have them for a specific meal, if you're looking to have them for one of your holiday meals, you might go in and harvest this. My plants are looking so good right now, I am just leaving them. But this is a good soft green that will be, I didn't harvest this, but Jaime Bustos did, Terra Madre Mini Farm, and he took to the farm to table some of these sweet potato leaves. Now this is like spinach. It's very tasty like spinach, and it's very soft like spinach. So this is a good one if you like that more real soft leaf. Grow sweet potatoes and then just harvest their sweet potatoes. On top of that, or their leaves, on top of that, you can also use their pretty little edible flowers too. See how pretty those are? And little things like that get people to eat vegetables they would never eat.
It also elevates a common dining experience in your home.
Always, and makes people want to eat with you more often. People like to eat with me a lot, and that's fun, because that means that if I ever needed food, they would invite me over to eat. I'm growing all my radishes here. French breakfast radishes, harvesting a lot of those. These are newly planted rows. You've seen me talking about that. Clean up the entire row and then make a decision about the main thing I'm going to be planting there. Is it carrots? Is it radishes? Whatever. and then go back in and sprinkle a fall mix on top of that, which then you'll see pops of mustard greens coming up, sweet alyssum, buckwheat, all kinds of stuff like that. Over here, I turned this row into, after, this was the first row I planted. It didn't do super great because it was still so hot. The soil was still so hot. I think I planted this in either late August or early September. I have already harvested the initial growth that was on it, cleaned up some weeds, and then replanted turnips on top of it. So my turnips are all starting to pop now. And so that's how I do it. I just go through each row, clean it and plant it, clean it and plant it. You can see this one, I've begun cleaning it. I haven't planted it yet because it had fire ants on it. But look at that flower over there. I think it's like a strawberry lemonade or something like that.
Pretty.
Isn't that a pretty zinnia?
Mm-hmm.
And then you can see what I was talking about here with these beautiful leaves and how I've trimmed back. Each row has gotten a little bit more worked on it, on this beautiful celosia flowers with the fire stick, hot pink ends there.
Clearly the bees love them.
Yep. And this was a situation where I bought cut flowers from a grower at the farmer's market, Oso Bay Farm, and I saved the seeds when the flower died, and then it came up, and then it came up one stalk, and then I saved the seeds from that one and spread them out all over the place.
Well, they're everywhere.
And they are everywhere. Yep.
And that doesn't bother you.
So just reseeding, absolutely not. You drive by this farm, you see this beautiful fall colors here. Not only are you seeing all of that, but as I grow things, as I clean rows up, I'm having some shade. I'm having some wind protection from little baby plants because I've got all of this good stuff growing. Now, if I get to a point where the daylight hours are super short, we're staying in the cool temperatures consistently, and I haven't yet had a freeze, I will need to go through anywhere where I have planted new baby starts or new baby seeds. Like this is a brand new cleaned row with new seeds in it that haven't quite germinated yet, but it's planted. So what I would need to do then is clean up the shade, like make sure that everything's getting sun. So that's one thing you might have to do, but that's dependent on whether or not the weather can do it for you, because the weather might be able to do it for you. So you can see what's happening with that. You can see how many of these I've gone in and really cut out the center stalk of things, and they're just growing back. So you can see here, cut out the center stalk of it. Down here at the bottom, this would be the stuff that I would eat. This nice, soft green leaves. Ooh, that wasn't a friend that wants to hurt me. I have yellow jackets out here still, although they seem to be pretty busy. Once the yellow jackets get busy. So this is a early planted. You can see all the things that are coming up in here. And some of this was just stuff that just got happy again. So the basil is just doing really well. But I've also got down here on the bottom some okra that came up by itself. And then some radishes. You can see the radishes down inside there. I've got some carrots coming up. This is a radish. Carrot. Radish. Radish. Carrot. Carrot. So you can see all kinds of things here. Some wildflowers, some pretty Gliardia wildflowers. That's what these are. So if those get too big and bushy, I just cut them out. But I prefer those weeds over obnoxious weeds that I don't want, that are not beneficial in any way. Now these rows I've been going back. This is like probably the second row I cleaned and planted this year. And I've just gone back. So you can even see where I went back, started again. I just came all the way back down. I harvested the radishes out. So all the radishes are gone now. But now I had already planted my carrots, which take longer to germinate. So the carrots are starting to come up, and the dill too. So like this is dill, this is a carrot. Can you see the difference between the leaves? See how this one's a little more firm, like a parsley leaf, a little flatter. This is real frilly.
Wispy.
That's a dill. So that's how you can tell the difference in the babies. This is alyssum. So you can tell that this got carrots and a nice fall mix spread on top of it. So my carrots are starting to pop. So before too long, this row will start to come back again. It won't be weeds, it'll be carrots. This is a Trombonchino squash from last season. There it is, putting on its little babies. There's a hollyhock. Now this garden has been watered in that I have to germinate the seeds. So I have to water it in order to make sure my seeds get germinated. But it's not on an irrigated system. So the plants have lived through this without irrigation. More Trombonchino starting to set. Look, here's one right here. These are plants that were planted indoors and then transplanted, seeds planted indoors, and then...
So the flower comes out first and then becomes the tip of the fruit that comes in behind it?
Mm-hmm. Let's see if there's some more over here. Look, here's some that look better over here. Those were all kind of mutilated looking. Those were mutant Trombonchinos. Look at these. See, more Trombonchinos. These plants are so successful. Everyone needs to be growing them. This is turnips, beets. Beets are a little challenged this time of year because the caterpillars eat the baby beets because they've got those tiny little leaves on them. So if I can get enough of them to come up, even if something kind of starts to eat it, as it starts to put its root in, then it's okay. So these are things to keep in mind. But as I'm going back through, okay, I'm saying, today, what am I doing? Am I cleaning a row that has already been planted and replanting it? Or am I taking out a new row and completely clearing it and replanting it and getting it all set and ready? But that always means, no matter what, like a row like this, I'm gonna leave the things that are healthy. So here's a nice Jing orange okra plant next to a roselle plant that has clearly been harvested like crazy. Clean it up, got some sunlight on the bottom down here, seeds germinating. I can pull my weeds out, but in addition to that, popping in transplants of pretty flowers. I've got okra coming up. This is a pea, who knows?
What's that?
That's some kind of little cantaloupe. It's on this. It just resprouted again. I don't know whether it'll ever do anything. That doesn't bother me. Another beautiful green Jing orange. I just love this. Look for that seed. I think I got it from Southern Exchange. I like them. I also like Territorial Seed Company. I usually order from those two companies for spring stuff because I like the spring varieties that they have. And then I order from Johnny's and Baker Creek for my fall stuff. I might reorder again from Johnny's and Baker Creek.
What's the pretty orange flower in there?
That is the Mexican sunflower, or Teflonia. And it's very pretty. It doesn't have a very sturdy stalk. So it's really a little bit hard for cut flowers, although you can do it. I have. It's pretty, especially with those white zinnias in the mix.
Mm-hmm. Very
But
fall.
that particular plant had a serious ant pile on it, and the whole plant is sideways. So I've just kind of left that area alone. But I can go back in between the areas, clean, and fill in different little plants. So here's more. See all this? This is all roselle. Don't want to do anything with that right now. But down here, I've put in seeds that are now starting to pop back up again. Of course, the flood may have caused some issues with this particular area.
8 inches in an hour might.
Yes, because it washed through here, literally washed through here. Here's some kind of big winter squash that just came up. But then I popped in snapdragons here at the end just to add some pretty and some color and some more things in. So that's how I'm doing my permaculture style of gardening. It's using all of my spaces. It's making sure that I have plenty of carbon material. Because if you haven't heard me say before, mycorrhizal fungi network underneath your soil or in your soil around your vegetable plants or your perennials is essential. Your plants can't access the water and the minerals and the food that they need if they don't have roadways and banks and all of those things. And mycorrhizal fungi is your network underneath the soil, and it eats carbon like we do, sugar, and the carbon comes from the wood, the brown leaves, the brown cardboard, things like that. And that's what we're doing here in this style of gardening. Leaving things alone, letting the insects fight their own battles, that kind of stuff. All right, so lots of things going on as the fall just ramps up more and more and more. I wanted to remind you, November the 3rd is the Long Lunch Club. We're gonna be focusing on fresh fall herbs. I literally only have a few seats left. So get yours today. It's an amazing event where we take a in-person garden tour and we sit down to lunch. 4 courses plus a nice beverage, all have the seasonal ingredients plus other farm-to-table dishes in there as well. And an opportunity to sit down and talk about homesteading, wellness, how we grow things, how we harvest things, how we cook all those things. That's November the 3rd. It's $36 a seat. get yours today. And then don't forget also November the 15th at 10 a.m. a carload of 7 people could only cost $44, or a carload of 3 people only costs $44. It's up to you. That's going to happen on November the 15th. That's Herbs for Health and Farm Forage with my friend Justin Duncan from National Center for Appropriate Technology. And of course, do not forget that we are launching episode 3.9. 3.08. So season 3, episode 8, Dinner Table Talks, launches on Monday morning. See you very soon. Love you guys. Have a great week.